Good evening. I'm Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, and welcome to tonight's Kalamazoo City Commission meeting of January 4, 2021. Tonight's meeting is being streamed on the City of Kalamazoo's Facebook page, as well as the city's YouTube channel. You can listen on your phone to the meeting by calling area code 269-552-6425 and entering meeting ID number 934-5989-2169 when prompted. And you may also leave public comments for tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-226-6573. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor David Anderson.
Once again, thank you so much, Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain. I appreciate it. I'd like to call this first meeting of 2021 together for January 4th. Starting off what I hope will be a better year perhaps than what 2020 has been for all of us together. Our first item is roll call. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here.
Your location?
Thank you. City of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Hess.
Here in the city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Knott.
Here, Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Pradle.
Present in the city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Urban.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Here in the city of Kalamazoo.
Mayor Anderson.
Here in the city of Kalamazoo. Thank you so much, Clerk Borley. Tonight, we do not have an invocator for our opening ceremony. So our next step will be the adoption of the formal agenda. Commissioners, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes commissioners would like to see? See no indication of that. Next item is communications. City Manager Ritzma, any communications? You're muted, Manager Ritzma.
There we go.
There we go.
Yes, I'd like to make a statement this evening, and just by way of introduction, about a year ago, well, in the 2020 budget, we created the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And in February of last year, I appointed Dorla Bonner as our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Director. And with the beginning of a new year, we felt it would be a good start to make the following statement and also support what is going to be later in the agenda in action that we're asking the City Commission to take. So I'll read the following statement. Racism is a painful part of American history. Systemic racism, unfortunately, is deeply rooted not only within our country, but within our cities and all of our present-day local government institutions, including the City of Kalamazoo. Despite legislation meant to correct racial inequities, challenges remain, and the trauma and intersected toxic impacts caused by systemic racism are endured daily by people of color in our community. The City of Kalamazoo is committed to governing intentionally to create equitable and inclusive outcomes for everyone in Kalamazoo. This commitment begins with understanding and acknowledging the truth of our past and the harms that the City of Kalamazoo has historically played in creating and sustaining systemic racism. At the City of Kalamazoo, we are committed to this anti-racism journey, which will require courageous and continuous leadership and must be informed by the trauma caused by systemic racism, past and present. We hope to work collaboratively with our community and community organizations focused on realizing transformational change for racial equity. We understand that words are not enough, and we must demonstrate our commitment to transformational change with credible action to change policies, promote community healing and increase trust, and ensure community members are treated fairly and are truly valued. So later in this meeting, the City Commission will be asked to approve a contract to hire a consultant to perform the city's first diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment. The assessment results will be used to inform our first DEI plan, which will help us continue in areas where we are strong and strengthen areas where we are weak. Also, as part of this plan, we will develop an anti-racism task force to work alongside our director of DEI to make sure all areas of the organization are on this journey. That concludes my comments, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. I appreciate that. Are there any commissioners that want to follow up with any comments on Manager Ritzman's statement at this time? Commissioner Knott, yes.
Sorry, I apologize. I did the whole Zoom thing. I want to begin addressing you all by stating that as a white woman, I recognize that I have my own biases and my own anti-racism work to do. And while tonight's statement is long overdue, and I'm committed to supporting Director Bonner as she leads us through this diversity, equity, and inclusion work, it would be disingenuous of me not to express the irony of tonight's statement, which unfortunately rings a bit hollow. As you recall, at our last meeting, we were told that the former chief of police was in fact let go, as we needed new leadership to guide us through the challenges that our community faced and continues to face. We had an opportunity, but more importantly, an obligation to inform our community that we recognize those challenges in real time. Part of tonight's statement that we just heard, and I quote, includes this: "This commitment begins with understanding and acknowledging the truth of our past and the harms that the city of Kalamazoo has historically played in creating and sustaining systemic racism." And yet at our last meeting, this commission failed to do exactly that. Instead of addressing an action that continued to cause harm, especially to our Black and brown neighbors, the commission chose to adopt a watered down resolution that basically wagged our finger at the city manager and told him not to do it again. Tonight, we are in essence patting ourselves once again on the back saying, look at us doing the hard work. But 2 weeks ago, we made a dramatic statement that we're not interested in engaging in hard work. So how do we expect the community at large to trust us this evening that tonight's statement that was just read is a commitment and not just words, and truly any different? Now, I have full faith in the utmost respect for Director Bonner, and I know that this assessment that we're going to be approving a little bit later in our agenda is her mission, and she will execute it with excellence. We need to recognize that we have shattered trust and put a shroud on transparency within our community. So I ask you as my colleagues, how do we regain the city staff's trust, and I mean the larger city staff that I've heard from in the last 2 weeks, as well as the community at large trust as we support Director Bonner and begin this work? And that's all I have to say on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Any other comments at this time? Commissioner Cunningham.
I will say my biggest frustration is it is the year 2021. And as a Black man in this community, and as just a person of color in general, it's unfortunate that it took my lifetime and every individual who's on this Zoom call's lifetime to do some of the ground zero work that needs to be done. And that's not to say that work hasn't been done in the past, but I think just the simple acknowledgement that Chief Coakley is our first African-American to serve in his role, I think highlights the frustration that I have just within our administration, within our community, within the nation. For years, my entire life, there has been a frustration, a point of contention between people of color and our public safety. And for years, something as simple as that has always been neglected. There has been forms of actions, but none of them to the point of dramatic change, and none of them creating the change right now. As we started this journey back in June, I think one of the things that I really evolved into over that time kind of goes back to what Commissioner Knott spoke on, and that's the accountability. Not only is it about the accountability, but it's the changing of the standards. Everything that's transpired in my lifetime, all of the things that that we've seen that were negative impacts to not just people of color, but individuals that are in our community, whether it be our administration or other administration, other businesses, other organizations in our community. It's unfortunate that it took this long to get to these type of changes. The thing that needs to really change is the standards of what we allow. That is, until that happens, and that goes, I think it goes hand in hand, standards and accountability. And what you were stating is very true, Commissioner Knott. In order for the standard to change, we have to have accountability behind the actions that we deem negative, that we deem unacceptable. And that's the change that I want to see. I understand that it takes time to get to lay the groundwork in a lot of these instances. And I think that this option and opportunity that we're taking advantage of as the city administration is getting towards that goal. We also have a public hearing coming up for the community to be a part of, and that is being conducted by our public safety and the team that is doing the investigation on instances from this summer. And in that, I guess part of my frustration is it's just more of the same. I don't want a listening session. I don't want to talk about the trauma that you know, that you see, that you felt, that you've experienced year in, year out. But reality is that's a part of the journey. That's one of the steps we have to take. And as much as I have lack of patience in that field, in that arena, and some of the things that has to happen in order for us to effectively heal from the trauma, from the years of for lack of a better word, aggression against not just African Americans, but there are other populations who've dealt with just nonsense, unacceptable behavior. And so, I guess my comment tonight is not only do I want to see the accountability, not only do I want to see the changes in standards, but I want it to be sincere. I want it to be truly from the top down, within this organization, within our community. And I believe in the impossible. So I think it can be done. I think that it can be easily done. I don't think that it'll always be a fun journey, but I look forward to it and doing it together. But overall, I appreciate this administration's willingness to go down this path. And once again, whether it be this commission, commissioners in our future, I need the accountability to continuously be there. And so once again, thank you to the city administration for at least starting the journey. But in reality, until we see the fruits of the labor, as an African American, it's going to be hard to really accept some of those apologies, some of those actions. And I want to encourage city staff. In reality, I've spoken to our Chief Coakley. Regardless of how perfect KDPS, this administration, executes, you have to continuously do it. And it's going to take years for wounds to heal. So there's going to be times where you're frustrated by doing what's right. It's still going to come back negatively on you. But in reality, you have to continuously do it. And those are the burdens that we bear for our generation because they weren't healed a long time ago. So I just want to say to my commission, some of you will be here while I'm gone. And I need this to continuously move forward as a body, as a community, as leaders. And I appreciate all of those willing to stand in the gap and fight when necessary, when needed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Cunningham. Any other comments at this time? Commissioner Urban, was that you?
I'm unmuting.
Okay.
I'm just unmuted. Well, as I hear my colleagues express themselves, I am taking deep breaths and recognizing that when we rip off the Band-Aid, it's going to hurt. And I'm feeling that as a member of the putative body that's thought of as being an authority in this country. So I have a lot of work to do, but I really hope as we hold other people accountable, we hold ourselves accountable for being responsible for what we do in the moment daily to bring about the change that people in this country have been needing for 400 years. It can't be pleasant, but I, in spite of the pain that is going to be coming forward as we reveal more unsavory truths about ourselves, that we do not lose heart. And we work as well as we can together with the respect that we have for each other now, and I hope that the respect we have now continues to grow.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you. The statement, it is appreciated. However, it is late, but that's to be expected. I do appreciate the work that Director Bonner is trying to do, but I absolutely echo the sentiments of Commissioner Knott. And I asked a question in the last meeting, what are the plans for gaining trust for this community moving forward? To make a statement, in order for it to have weight, there has to be action behind it. Accountability just got used a lot of times in this call, in this meeting. Yet when we have opportunities to hold people accountable, that does not happen. So I'm very confused how this is going to move forward. And I'm saying this to this body, where we are responsible as elected officials to hold people accountable, and we don't do that. What is the expectation moving forward? And so, when we speak of Band-Aids being ripped off, communities have been in pain and suffering for a very, very long time. So some people's Band-Aids have been off for a while. We just had an opportunity to gain trust, to build trust, to hold accountability and everything, and that we failed at that.
What did you?
How are we going to move forward productively with this, not just being a statement and an action?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other comments at this time from commissioners? Commissioner Hess.
I appreciate everyone's thoughts and and hopefully actions moving forward. And yes, our ability to hold people and systems accountable. Something that I read today. There's a book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And the intro to chapter 1 begins with a quote from The Promise of World Peace by the Baha'i Universal House of Justice in 1985. And it says, racism, one of the most baneful and persistent evils, is a major barrier to peace. Its practice perpetrates too outrageous a violation of dignity of human beings to be countenanced under any pretext. Racism retards the unfoldment of the boundless potentialities of its victims, corrupts its perpetrators, and blights human progress. Recognition of the oneness of mankind, implemented by an appropriate legal measure, must be universally upheld if this problem is to be overcome. I don't know if the little city of Kalamazoo is going to overcome systemic racism, but at least we can continue to do so with the great efforts of Dorla and her staff, and indeed us. I also received today the Kalamazoo Community Foundation newsletter, where Carrie Pickett Irway talks about the intersection of equity and education. And as a commissioner, I will always talk about the availability of education in this town and the necessity of education in this town, and especially my own education about race and about racism. But to hold our county, our city, and our community available and accountable for making sure that everyone in this town has an opportunity for education is important to me. And I want to make sure that I do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Pradel.
This is one of those moments as a white male where I'm kind of trying to reconcile the fact that I'm trying to take a listening posture, but also, people that I admire and respect a lot remind me that, that silence isn't acceptable either. So, I just wanted to share that one of the things I appreciated from the early part of your reading, Jim, is your statement that this is an anti-racism journey. And I think, in any journey that you're going to make in life, you're going to have bumps in the road. You're going to have things you're going to do wrong. And hopefully you're going to do far more things that you do right. I think all of us would agree that our last meeting was far from perfect the way that we want it, but life doesn't happen perfectly. And so, I think that the goal of mine is always to think about how we can move forward in a positive direction and improve upon where we were the day before. And, I certainly remain committed to this journey with my colleagues, and I'm glad to get to do that with you. So thank you guys for taking this first step. Thank you, Director Bonner, for pushing the city to take this first foundational step. And just want to echo the fact that I think our words aren't enough, but the action that we make moving forward is what's going to matter most. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Any other thoughts at this time? So I just want to say at this moment is that I do support this statement. I think it indicates clearly the work that needs to be begun in a more robust fashion. I want to thank Director Bonner for her part in moving this work forward. My natural inclination, I guess, as a human being and how I approach things is I don't so much lead with statements. I am more inclined to do the work. So that, to use a phrase, is going to be where it will be proven or not. The proof will be in the pudding. So there's the statement, and I think now we all look forward energetically to the work. So thank you for the statement. Next on our agenda is item E, public hearings. I'd like to open a public hearing to receive comments on the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget for the city of Kalamazoo. Is there a staff presentation on this item, Manager Ritzma?
Yes, Mayor, we're gonna, our CFO, Steve Asensi, is gonna give a summary of the budget.
Mayor Anderson, Vice Mayor Griffin, Commissioners, it is my pleasure to present the 2021 proposed budget for public comment tonight. The budget was transmitted to you and posted on our website on December 1st and has been available for public viewing since then. You held a public work session on December 14th on the budget. This budget includes a total budget of $213,892,050, with a general fund total of $68,301,379. We project an unreserved general fund balance of about 19% of operating reserves, exceeding our target of 15%. We project to meet or exceed this target during the duration of the 5-year plan. This budget also includes an unchanged millage rate of 12 mills for operations and 1.8 mills for solid waste. It supports 673 full-time positions and 8 part-time positions, and also has $62.6 million in capital improvements across all funds, supported by a variety of sources. I would like to thank the City Manager's Office, all departments and department heads, and specifically the budget team, including Jennifer Clark and Valletta Sellers Evans, for all of their hard work to bring this budget together this year. The budget will also be brought forward to you for final consideration on January 19th in advance of our charter deadline of February 1st. I will now turn it back over to you for questions and any public comment.
Thank you, Steve Vincenzi. I appreciate that. Just a quick question, just to remind anyone who's paying attention here, how can someone access the budget and take a look at it themselves and go through obviously a great level of detail that is contained in that budget?
Yes, this year was the first year we had an online budget book. You can access that at kalamazooCity.org/budgets, and it'll be the first link on the top.
Thank you so much. And I want to remind all of us that there is no action requested on this budget tonight. This is a hearing on our budget. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do have some public comments, and we'll go ahead with those.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Emily Demarest, and I'm a resident of the City of Kalamazoo. First of all, thank you to Commissioners Knott and Griffin for voting against the motion during the last meeting to forgive Manager Ritzma for lying about the departure of former Chief Thomas. I think it was a totally inappropriate motion to approve and did not at all serve the purpose of building trust with the community. The city can post all the transparency pages in the world, but if what's happening behind the scenes is violating that transparency, none of it matters. I want to touch on one new thing in the budget that I haven't seen before, which is the discussion of community benefit agreements being required of city contractors in order to win bids for brownfield development. Other communities, including Detroit, have used CBAs for a long time, and I'm happy that we're now having this discussion here. From an outside person looking in, it seems that various developers are given tax breaks basically anytime they ask for one, even if they are large enough companies that they could afford to pay. Plaza Corp, for example, received tax incentives in 2015, even though they own over 30 properties in the Kalamazoo area, many of them large properties downtown. There needs to be a robust discussion about the requirements of CBAs and set the bar high for qualification. So far, the projects funded all seem to be high-end restaurants people can't afford to eat in, shops they can't afford to shop in, and apartments they can't afford to rent. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Parker James. I do not live in the city of Kalamazoo, but have in the past and have many friends that are living there and want to provide my input on the proposed budget. I was disappointed to see that the budget is still almost half goes to public safety. Even though the things that would really make, Kalamazoo residents safe, such as high quality housing and neighborhoods, fall by the wayside for money to go to cops. That's not, what that money should be going towards. Only 5% of the budget to community planning and economic development. Like I said, the things that would really make residents safe. And of that budget, only $3,000 is going to community development, which is supposed to support programs that address Kalamazoo's housing, neighborhood, and community development needs. We need more money in, areas like community planning and economic development to ensure that renters, people experiencing homelessness and unhoused are safe in our communities. We do not need more cops. And so, I was also glad to see there's money for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but only $280,000. And public safety has a budget of $32 million. We need money for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We need money for community planning and economic development. So I would love for you all to reconsider this budget and reassess the priorities and what's actually going to allow people to live safe, healthy, prosperous lives. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Benak. I live within the city. I'm calling to make a comment on the budget. I want to start by saying that the budget is badly unbalanced, with almost 50% going to public safety. We need to keep in context, keep in our minds what public safety is. It is a deeply damaged and dysfunctional department that does not deserve half of our city's budget. Just, we can think about what has happened in the last year. This is a department that has gassed peaceful demonstrators. It has made excuses for the Proud Boys, the neo-Nazis in our community. It has failed to protect our citizens from gun violence. It's a department that is so deeply flawed, the city had to fire the chief and then hide that it was fired and make excuses. And what was the next step? The next step was that the city decided to hire a public information officer, a spin doctor, to hide all of the bad things that the city is doing and all of its ineptitude. And, we think that the city doesn't have enough money. Well, the city very quickly found the money to hire that person and moved faster than I've ever seen the city move to list and to interview and to hire someone for that position. So the city has the money and has the ability to move when it is something that is important. This budget is just, frankly, it's a farce. It is split into, here's the budget and here's our pretty presentation. The presentation itself is a product of disinformation. It is a bunch of projects with no details. There's no information about where the money is coming from. There's no information about what those are going to look like. Take, for example, the line in the presentation about creating better neighborhoods by giving people packets for gardening. Does that mean you're going to give people a packet of seeds and say, find some place to plant these? That's not a solution. There's another line in there that you're going to improve sustainability by idling less while maintaining the parks and by no longer mowing portions of habitat. Habitat is not a unkempt turf grass lawn. There's a big difference. So the city needs to think about what it's doing, put real details, put real money, and be
Hi, my name is Tina McClinton. I live on Lake Street. I was calling because I happened to see the agenda online. I want to know, why are you giving tax breaks to new businesses when, if they can afford to build a multi-million-dollar business, they should be able to afford to pay taxes? And from what I understand, I heard Kalamazoo was broke, but yet you keep still trying to build. Maybe that's why you're trying to put apartments in a floodplain? Is that why? Because you can, because it's cheap and you don't care? But you can, and the other part I don't understand is you can help businesses downtown. What about all the other businesses in Kalamazoo that are struggling? Downtown is not the only business that's struggling. And if you got all this money and someone gave you money, why wouldn't you fix your infrastructure, your sewers, your storm drains that back up in our basements in Southtown neighborhood? And maybe then you could stop flooding us out on Lake Street. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Joe Byers, and I'm a city resident. I'm calling in to give my opinion on the proposed city budget. Our mayor has said before that Kalamazoo is like a microcosm of what's happening around the country. I couldn't agree more, especially after doing some digging into the proposed budget. Just like the national conversation, Kalamazoo has no plan to defund and demilitarize KDPS, despite huge public support. In fact, the budget is virtually unchanged from 2020, despite large-scale protests both nationally and locally. Secondly, December 3rd, 2019, Kalamazoo passed a climate emergency resolution. You wouldn't know it if you poured over the city budget. Reducing mow zones, creating a drop-off spot for used car sales and used car tires, and planting a few trees is not addressing the crisis. Not once on paper or watching the presentation of the proposed budget on YouTube were the words climate crisis uttered once. Public comments have largely been ignored, and it's obvious to anybody paying attention that this commission and current city leadership refuse to put the needs of our residents above the endless greed of the city billionaires, huge developers, and corporations that are literally poisoning city residents. One only has to watch the last city commission meeting where the majority voted to forgive the city manager for lying to the entire city and at the same time voting for alcohol in our parks when nobody but big businesses were asking for it. Lastly, I'd like to speak about housing in the city. This is one area I believe the city wants to do the right thing and has helped several individuals obtain or stay in their homes last year. But once again, leadership failed to realize the size and scope of the help that is really needed. Again, nowhere on paper or during the budget meeting were the homeless camps in our city even mentioned, nor any real meaningful discussion was had to seriously address the housing crisis in Kalamazoo. I think we need to go back to the drawing board and work on the priorities of city residents. Good evening.
You're in city resident. Despite almost a year of COVID-19, its terrible economic consequences and the disgraceful behavior of both KDPS and the behavior of people in this meeting. Hey, Jim, how's it going? It's baffling to see that the city budget remains almost exactly the same as it was last year. The lack of change in the budget shows that you guys have learned nothing. The KDPS budget remains unchanged despite, the firing of their chief. That's right, the firing of their chief. Macing and tear gassing peaceful protesters and allowing white supremacists to attack our community with, no consequences. However, with this budget, KDPS will receive all the bells and whistles they asked for, no doubt to use against Kalamazoo residents on the streets again. We're looking forward to that. As the Commission knows, in Kalamazoo there are 2 large homeless camps in the city and they're growing. Instead of funding more tear gas to fire at residents, perhaps the City Commission could build actual solutions to the housing crisis that you've ignored and in some cases personally profited from. How many landlords are there on the board, by the way? Anyway, for the normal person, the quickest and most robust response the City Commission has given over the last 12 months was when you rubber stamped a downtown curfew and welcomed armed National Guard into our city over a few broken windows. I ask you this, are broken windows the only thing you respond to? What must be done for the residents of Kalamazoo to receive the budget they deserve? And for those in the Commission who earlier this year said Black Lives Matter and participated in the protests, ask yourself if those ideas and messages expressed by the community at those events can actually coexist with the budget you're about to sign. In short, to fund the police, fund the community.
That was our last public comment.
Thank you very much, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. So if there's no comments, then any more comments, I'd like to close the public hearing. Commissioners, there is no requested action at this time. The 2021 budget will be presented for adoption at our next meeting. Is that correct, City Manager Ritzma?
Yes.
All right, thank you, City Manager. Next is item E2, but just before I go to that, I would like to thank everyone who called in this evening with their comments. I do want to correct a little bit of a misrepresentation, is that our budget is approximately 214 million, about 15%, 1/5 of that is public safety, not 50%. All right, so next is item E2. And I'd now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on substantial amendments to the 2019-2023 Consolidated Plan and 2019 Action Plan as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
Yes, Mayor. Vanessa Collins-Smith from our Community Development Department will provide a brief overview on the consolidated plan and plan amendments. And then Lisa Wilcutt, Vice President of Lockhart Management and Consulting, will also be available on the Zoom to answer any questions about the Lodge House project as needed. Turn it over to Vanessa.
Emmy, are you ready? Sorry, I was looking for the button. Yes, I'm ready. So good evening and welcome to the Community Planning and Economic Development Community Investment Division, second 2019 Consolidated Plan and Action Plan Substantial Amendment Public Hearing Presentation. My name is Tammy Ray and I'm the chair of the Community Development Act Advisory Committee for the City of Kalamazoo. CDAC works with community planning and economic development, community investment staff to advise the City Commission on matters pertaining to community development within the City of Kalamazoo and to make recommendations on the expenditure of federal funding. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the other participants. So we have Mr. Antonio Mitchell, who is the Community Investment Manager for the City of Kalamazoo, Ms. Vanessa Collins-Smith, the Community Development Coordinator for the City of Kalamazoo, and Lisa Wilcutt, who is representing the Lift Foundation. Next slide, please. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an overview of the CARES Act 3 allocation and funding recommendations relating to the COVID-19 pandemic, to solicit citizen comments, and for our City Commission to approve submission of Community Investment Second 2019 Consolidated Plan and Action Plan Substantial Amendment related to the COVID-19 pandemic to HUD. The city's consolidated plan and annual action plans describe the housing and community development needs, as well as activities to address those needs through the City of Kalamazoo, as defined and funded by the U.S. Department of HUD. These plans bring together in one consolidated submission the planning and application aspects of the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, and our Home Investment Partnership Grant. Objectives and goals are the result of our resident voices, informing the city of resident and community needs through a variety of modalities during the citizen participation process. Next slide, please. In compliance with HUD memos dated March 31st, 2020 and April 9th, 2020, the following amendments are proposed for the City of Kalamazoo 2019 through 2023 Consolidated Plan and 2019 Annual Action Plan. These amendments set up response to disaster and emergency preparedness, specifically in response to the COVID-19. At this time, Ms. Vanessa Collins-Smith will address amendments to Program Year 2019 Consolidated Plan and Action Plan.
This evening, I will be addressing our updated 2019 substantial amendments for our Consolidated Plan and Action Plan. Next, please. This is the second amendment to the city's 2019 Consolidated Plan Needs Assessment Narrative, which reflects our second community-based award and HUD's third CARES Act allocation in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This amendment will focus on homeless prevention. Next, please. We have updated our priority assessment narrative to address the current needs of our homeless population. Next, please. We have updated the overall funding received over the 5-year con plan period to include HUD's Act 3 allocation to the city of Kalamazoo. Next, please. For our 2019 action plan, community investment has amended the 2019 budget to reflect an increase from $3,719,411 to $4,202,193. This increase is a result of COVID-19 funding in the amount of $482,782. Next, please. As of today's following amendments, we have made the following changes in response to COVID-19. Senior services, $25,000 for Meals on Wheels. To quarantine individuals or individuals that need to maintain social distancing during the medical vulnerabilities. Housing Resources, Inc., rental assistance in the amount of $719,053 to address eviction prevention, to individuals that have been impacted by COVID-19. United Way, small business grants, funding in the amount of $239,684. This small business grant provides up to $2,500 to assist small businesses in purchasing supplies and materials that will assist their business in reopening to the public, maintaining a clean environment, and promoting a social distance environment. Next, please. The second amendment to the 2019 action plan budget in response to COVID-19 is the joint effort by the city's Community Development Act Advisory Committee, CDAC, and the city to award the CARES Act 3 allocation in the amount of $482,782 to the Live Foundation to assist in the purchase of the Night's Inn. Upon purchase, the Night's Inn will provide shelter for our homeless during the winter. In the summer of 2021, the Night's Inn will be renovated to provide 60 low-barrier permanent housing units to address homeless prevention. At this time, I will turn it over to the City Commission.
Thank you very much. So first thing I want to do here is I do want to recognize people we don't see all the time. I want to recognize a newly elected county commissioner, Tammy Ray, who has been chair of our CDAC committee. Thank you, Ms. Ray, for all that great work, and congratulations on now beginning to serve on the county commission. So I appreciate you being here to help us with that and you sharing all this work. Also, I want to recognize our own city director here of community development coordinator, Vanessa Collins-Smith. Thank you very much for leading us through this. So at this point, there have been some recommendations made, and there will be an action requested tonight of the commission to adopt the amendments and authorize the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development to sign all documents required by HUD. At this point, I guess we could, if there's specific questions, we could do that first, or we could go ahead and have this motion supported and then have some comments. Is there inclination about how folks would like to do that? Commissioner Cunningham.
I have one question. What type of budget cuts have we seen in the last 5 years, and what kind of budget cuts can we tentatively expect for the next 5 years during this consolidated plan.
Who's going to be best, wants to answer that question for Commissioner Cunningham? I saw that Director Kick, you are on the call. Are you? Or Coordinator Colin Smith?
Okay, so within the past 5 years, the most substantial budget cut have pretty much been to housing and to our public safety. Our public safety has gone from $425,000 down to $400,000. And when it comes to our CDBG in home budget cuts, I do not have an actual percentage, but what I can say is that it has been substantial. And as relating to that, we are limited in what we can do for our community in relating to housing. So it's all you can do is say every year, you don't know whether it's going to be an increase or a cut, but most likely it will be a cut, but we're going to hope for the best.
So Commissioner Cunningham, as you suggested, we have been receiving fewer HUD dollars. I don't know if any of us will predict whether that's going to continue or not, but as a matter of fact, this year, we've gotten a great deal of additional money just because of the CARES Act, which has channeled extra funding through ESG for the most part, but also CDBG funding as well. So that has given a big boost to what has been a decreasing amount for the city of Kalamazoo. Other direct questions for staff on this topic? All right, thank you. So seeing none, is there a motion to adopt amendments and authorize the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development to sign all documents required by HUD?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham.
Mayor,
I'm sorry, supported by Commissioner Hess. Discussion.
Mayor.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ritzman.
Public comments.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So Deputy City Manager, are there separate comments on this then?
Mr. Mayor, we did not receive any public comments for this public hearing. So we have no comments.
Okay, thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. Appreciate that. A discussion, commissioners. Commissioner Cunningham.
I just want to thank city staff and also those members who are a part of CDAC. I was able to be a part of this process extensively back when we had our new consolidated plan back in 2015. And I noticed that, during that time, we did a lot of community engagement. And I can remember going from community to community within Kalamazoo to really try and dig deep into how do we, effectively allocate these resources throughout, for our needs. And I just want to say that it's not an easy task. And to basically do that through a pandemic, to do that with a lot of confusion with the administration that you're actually dealing with, I commend you, and I appreciate the work and the time and the effort that it takes to create these forms and these plans. And once again, to that CDAC board, this is a board that is unique in that not many communities have the opportunity to have citizens have direct input and say on these type of dollars that come into our community. And for not only is this board, able to give input, but it's also a board that doesn't get paid to do quite a bit of work. I know that each cycle of applications is very deep and detailed. And so once again, I just want to extend a thank you to city administration and that board specifically for your service.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Other discussion? Vice Mayor Griffin.
No discussion. I just want to echo the comments of Commissioner Cunningham, thanking the CDAC board and city staff for their work to make this possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Griffin. So, Commissioner Hess?
Again, thank you to city staff and CDAC. And then can someone here, whether it's Director Kick or maybe Vanessa, bring us up to speed and up to date on it? It was the Nights Inn purchase was mentioned. It's going to be more than the dollars allocated in the CDAC budget. And so who all is collaborating with this project, and when can we expect people to begin being housed there?
At this time, I will defer to Lisa Wilcott with the Lift Foundation.
Thank you, Vanessa. So Lift Foundation has been fundraising for this opportunity to purchase and renovate the Nights Inn for quite a few months now. There are funds available through several sources, philanthropic sources, that will allow us to effect the purchase on the 14th of this month. So there's still some fine tuning to do with some execution of some documents, but basically it's just paperwork from here on out, and the purchase should be in effect on the 14th. Today, the PATH team at Integrated Services of Kalamazoo started its outreach at the encampments. They're constantly doing outreach anyway, but really starting to hone in on who might be interested in becoming a new occupant at the motel. So the motel will be run as a motel for the winter months, while other work is being done to affect the transition from a motel to a permanent residence, right? So we'll have an architect finalizing the plans, getting the city's approval on those plans so that permits can be pulled, as well as going through the bidding process. So we expect construction would not start until June, and then a pretty short construction period, because again, this is an existing structure. It just needs to be renovated and to accommodate permanent living through creation of studio apartments. And so we're anticipating occupying before next winter, like October is when I'm planning on fully leasing it up. So funds over and above the purchase price have been secured, because we also needed to secure the funds for the renovation, right? So we're well on our way to that. Not all the renovation funds have been secured, but we are well on our way. And so we still have some fundraising to do, but it's a good possibility that everything will be wrapped up shortly.
Other discussion or questions? Commissioner Pradel.
Lisa, this might be a further question for you as well. Thanks for being here tonight as well. On the conversation, I'm trying to remember, did it say 60 units or 60 individuals? And in terms of how many people will be able to be housed?
It's 60 units. I don't know how many individuals. The architect is going to determine that. So it's a square footage calculation that the city has. And I've used it before for apartments. And so you actually have to take into account living space in that calculation. So sometimes you can have more people than just one. It's sometimes less, even though, I've had 2-bedroom apartments where I can only occupy with 3 people. So it's whatever the city's requirements are, and that's how we'll choose to fill units. I don't think it's more than 2 people, but it could be up to 2.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and just to echo everyone, thank you to everybody involved for their vision behind this work, and for city staff and leadership for making this happen as well. So thank you.
Other discussion or questions? Okay, I want to thank Lisa Wilcott for being here representing Lift Foundation. Thank you very much for that. One thing I neglected to do is actually close the public hearing. So the public hearing is officially closed, and we have a motion on the floor Seeing no other discussion, I guess Clerk Borland, are we ready to call the roll?
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle,
I'm going to take another abstention on this one just because it's related to CDBG and work related to community homeworks.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
I will be abstaining on this because I'm a longtime member of the Lift Foundation. So I'm definitely involved in this undertaking. I have no financial relationship with it in any way. I am a volunteer on the Lift board, but because of that, I will be abstaining on this vote.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Commission. The motion passes. Next is item E3. So I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to rezone 902, 912, and 920 West North Street and 715 Woodward Street to live work. 1. From residential multifamily, known as RM15. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
Yes, our city planner, Christina Anderson, will provide an overview of the proposed rezoning.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. This project that's before you tonight for your consideration is a rezoning of the properties that were damaged by fire in June of 2020. At the time of the fire, the city declared its support for the redevelopment of sites. That redevelopment included both the cleanup of the site as well as support for actual redevelopment with structures and uses. Prior to the fire, these properties were all residential multifamily buildings, but going back to the 1950s, these properties were not only containing residential units, but also small commercial businesses, including a law office. The current zoning, RM15, only allows residential development, even though the North Street corridor, that street, includes residential, commercial, and civic uses. And there's an interest among the property owners, including one of the owner of 902, who you all received a letter from prior to this meeting, are interested in doing mixed-use development, or at least having the option to do mixed-use development, which is why we are working with them to request that these properties be rezoned to Live Work 1, which would allow for them to do small neighborhood-scale mixed-use buildings or solely residential buildings within the scale and size of the existing character of the area. These blocks are also part of the Stewart Historic District. So that's, making sure that it's the right scale is important. This went to Plan Commission in December and was offered for a first reading also in December in front of this body, and is now ready for public comment and your action. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Planner Anderson. Are there questions for Planner Anderson from the commission? Commissioner Pradle.
This is somewhat related, but I just was curious. I haven't had a chance to hear in terms of any follow-up of investigation or whatnot. I believe it was decided that it was pretty definitively arson that occurred on those properties, but does anybody know the answer to that?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I don't have that information. I'm happy to reach out to other staff to get you an answer to that question.
I was just curious.
After this meeting.
I know it just, it was during a kind of a murky time period where there was concern that was related to incidents going on in the community. And I just want to make sure that we close the loop so the community, has a better understanding of where that let off and if any investigations that occurred related to that. Just was curious. I know it's somewhat unrelated, but related. So.
We do have Chief Coakley on the Zoom here. I don't know if he can provide an update.
Good evening, Commissioner Pradle. To your point, to your question, that is my understanding. They were ruled as arson. That's correct, sir.
Does anybody, do you know if the investigation is still ongoing, or is were they unable to get much further with any investigation just because of the fire damage level and whatnot?
That's correct, sir. Much of the evidence that was collected, or that could be collected or wasn't collected, was destroyed in the fire.
Thank you. Is there other questions for staff on this? All right, seeing none. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, are there any public comments on this item?
There are no public comments on this public hearing, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Seeing none, I would now like to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Pradel. Further discussion, Commission. Commissioner Cunningham, I'm sorry.
I just want to say that to those, it's very unfortunate what took place on that corner. But I do want to highlight that each one of those owners, you know, the work that they put in, and the tenacity, the resilience that they're showing in this opportunity, and for the city administration to support it, I am very appreciative. You know, I just want to specifically name Ms. Twyla Lockett-Jones. She has been doing a lot of positive things in our community, and she is one of the individuals who lost a structure that she was looking to beautify for that community. And so I appreciate each one of the owners. I appreciate your vision, your business acumen. I also want to give a shout out to Mayor Anderson, because as a lot of that unfolded, I know that he worked directly with the city staff and quite a few of those owners to see what could be done to move a potential joint venture forward. What that looked like and what that panned out to be, I know that at least for this one, I know a proposed structure that it will be going up. I'm super excited. I think it's going to change the look of that corner in itself, and hopefully it provides the vibe that the community needs. So thank you to city staff. Thank you to all of the owners. I'm sorry again for what took place. And thank you also, Mayor Anderson, for your efforts and work in that space.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight correspondence that was received by one of the owners of the property, as Commissioner Cunningham just listed or just stated. Twyla Lockett-Jones, resident of Kalamazoo, a lifelong resident, realtor, broker, was one of the owners of that property who was supportive of this change. And as it's passed the Planning Commission, I just wanted to make sure the community at large is aware of this, as that correspondence came in via email. But just reassuring the community at large that the owners of these properties are in support of these changes.
Very important point. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other discussion? Commissioner Urban.
Well, I just like to add that the fact that all the owners are cooperating with one another, and that we're maintaining with the city's help the momentum of what Ms. Twyla Lockett had begun is really could be a model of other collaborative projects that could occur throughout the city, and especially in distressed neighborhoods. So I think it's really important that we stay with this and see it through to a successful conclusion, because I hope that it will be not a one-off type of thing, but a model for other kinds of projects throughout the city.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Any other discussion? I just want to say that obviously, all things that happen in a city are things that are personal to every one of us that serves on this commission. But I want to say, I guess even more so in this circumstance, this set of properties is just a few steps around the corner from where I live. And I first became aware of the what was going on that summer evening when I saw the flickering of the fire literally reflected off Woodward School and in my front window. And I spent several hours standing outside with Mayor Bobby Hopewell and a whole variety of other people from the community as we watched what was described as one of the largest fires that had been fought by public safety here in terms of a residential kind of fire. And multiple agencies responded to that fire. So it wasn't just City of Kalamazoo, it was also other departments from Portage and other adjacent jurisdictions. So very, very happy to see, even though it's been somewhat slow, it feels like, you know, the site has been cleaned up just in the last few days before the snow really started. So the rubble and what was pushed into a pile is now gone. And that's a good sign. It just feels like progress is being made. So I support that work, and I want to thank city staff who've been working to take us through to get to the point we are right now. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, commissioners. The motion passes. DCM Chamberlain, are there further public comments?
Yes, we do have a couple of public comments under general public comments, and we'll go ahead with those.
My comments, my name is Dorothy Appleyard, and I live in the city of Kalamazoo. My comments come after the disclosure by City Manager Ritzma that the information regarding Chief Thomas's dismissal was disingenuous. I'm very disillusioned that there is no meaningful communication with the public by either commissioners or staff. The pandemic has created new obstacles, but in my experience, there is no response or even acknowledgement to citizen inquiries or concerns from City Hall. I understand that the city has employed a communication specialist, but that really just creates another layer of bureaucracy that separates citizens from elected officials. I read a description of duties of commissioners, and it clearly states that representation of residents is primary. But how can the commission effectively serve the community if there's no method of two-way communication in place? I ask that you immediately, 1, review policies for communication and activate necessary changes to enhance authentic public conversations, and 2, to ensure strict compliance with the Open Meetings Act by conducting work sessions and meetings that are open to the public. If you truly want to be transparent and inclusive, please take decisive action to make that happen. The status quo just isn't good enough. I hope 2021 will be a season of change that fosters a renewed trust in city government. Thank you for your consideration.
Hi, my name is Shona Espinoza, and I live in Kalamazoo City, and I'm just not pleased with a lot of things that have happened within 2020 with all the, between even just sitting here watching you guys talk amongst yourself, the disrespect among the colleagues of color from some of, like David Anderson, Jim Ritzma. You guys seem like you kind of don't respect your colored colleagues, but you do your white colleagues. So you need to respect them. But it's 2021. You guys need to be held accountable for all your wrongdoings that you did in 2020, especially during the times of the protests. How you have put so many people in harm's way with the things that you have chose to do because of the color of somebody's skin. So I hope you do better in 2021.
That was the last public comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. Next is the consent agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
We have 3 items on the consent agenda this evening. First is the approval of a sole source purchase with Jet Pump and Valve LLC for the PureFill dry scrubber conversion kit and media in the amount of $250,216.56. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving the amended Act 381 Brownfield Plan for scattered site infill housing in the city of Kalamazoo. And item 3, approval of an amendment to the Brownfield grant contract for the 615 Holdings redevelopment project between the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy and the City of Kalamazoo Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, and authorize the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority chairperson to sign the amended documents.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is to approve items 1 through 3 and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Urban. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The consent agenda items are approved. Now we are down to our regular agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Item H1 is approval of a contract with Michigan Public Health Institute to conduct the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Assessment in the amount of $145,330.10.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Is there a staff report on this item?
Yeah, our DEI Director, Dorla Bonner, will provide some brief remarks on this item.
Thank you, City Manager Ritzma and Mayor Anderson. First off, I want to thank you, City Manager, for making a statement tonight. I apologize for being late. I want everyone to know that I totally support it and totally appreciate your courage. And not only in that statement, but your support of the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion beginning in our organization. Just a little background on this project we're asking you to approve. Since the fall of 2019, many of us have been attending ERACE Introduction to Systemic Racism, and some of us have extended to 2.5 day training. And there's a portion of that training that asks organizations to rate themselves on a continuum from being a racist organization to being an anti-racist organization. And most of us, and there have been 98 of us since the fall of 98 staff, leaders, commissioners, attended this, and most of us rated ourselves in the middle. None of us were able to say that we have already arrived at being anti-racist. And so that is the frame behind the statement tonight and the framework for why we're doing what we're doing, asking you to approve. During a 2.5 day session, I attended with the city manager and the deputy city managers and other leaders. We developed our first plan. And the first step of that plan was to conduct an internal equity assessment to gain knowledge of where we are strong so we can enhance it, and learn where we are not so strong so we can strengthen it. I firmly believe that transformative changes are not made on assumptions, but on truth. This assessment will give us truth. It is important to also note that this is an internal process. We are working on ourselves. so we can make sure staff are treated equitably, that the opportunities for employment and advancement are equitable rather, and we are aware of implicit biases that are harmful both internally and externally, and there's more to it than even that. But our ultimate goal of this is to make sure that, excuse me, that diversity, equity, and inclusion becomes part of our culture, so our inward facing work and community facing work reflects this culture. The results of this assessment will be used to develop our first equity plan, with one of the first actions being to put together a City of Kalamazoo internal anti-racist force to help champion the work across this organization. This is an intense and imperfect journey, but we are determined to stay the course. We ask that you approve this agreement with the Michigan Public Health Institute to conduct this diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Bonner. Is there any more presentation, Manager Ritzma?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Are there questions on this item from commissioners? Commissioner Urban.
Yes, I expect that there'll be a report produced by this organization when they've completed their work. Will that report be made public?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, it will.
And
Yeah, Commissioner Hess.
And Dorla, can you share perhaps a timeline for that and when we might expect these outcomes?
I talked to our consultants and urged him that we didn't want to be doing this all year. And so hopefully, sorry, my phone is ringing. The goal is to have it done by the latter part of the summer. And that's the assessment part. It will be done in sequences. That there's an equal employment opportunity, which is the data piece. And that'll be done first. And then there's the survey of staff and staff commissioners and volunteer chairs and board members. So the assessment should be done by the latter part of the summer. And then from there, Assistant Chief Green from Public Safety and I and a few other folks, we are going to work on our plan together. And so it's two phases. The first phase is the assessment, which will be shared, and the next phase will be developing a plan.
Awesome. So you will be working with KDPS.
Exactly, right, because there is only one organization, so there's only one plan. Now, there will be some special things for KDPS, and but I'm so sorry, my phone is just ringing. But it will just be an organizational plan with special sections for KDPS and other possibly larger parts of the organization.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pradel.
Director Bonner, would you mind sharing with public a little bit more about the Michigan Public Health Institute, and why they're best equipped or qualified to do the assessment?
So Michigan Public Health Institute, first I want to say that I was not alone. The interview team, the selection team consisted of myself, Steve Brown from FFE, Teresa Johnson for Public Services, and Deputy City Manager Patsy Moore. And they were the most responsive to our needs. Their process was cleaner in terms of their experience. They understand the Midwest. We only had 2 applicants, unfortunately. The other one was from the other side, was from the California. During our interviews, the teamwork was amazing, how they understood our questions. And then I met one-on-one with the chair to say, this is really what I want. And I want you to explain to me, can you exactly give me what I want? And he was able to articulate how to give me what I wanted, because I was real specific. We're very specific of what we're looking for, because this is too important to mess it up. So we're trying to do our very best. So that's why they were selected.
Thank you.
Other questions, commissioners? All right, seeing none. The recommended, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Griffin, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I don't necessarily have a question. Thank you, Director Bonner. I appreciate the work that you're trying to do in terms of making the city of Kalamazoo looking inward to do some equity work while we try to create an equitable community. I do just want to say, though, in terms of systems change as a whole, I do look forward to the day when we don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to, address things that we probably already know. Because if you have to ask yourself if you're equitable, then the answer is no. So, simple questions like of the 600 or so employees that are at the city, how many of them are of color? And then break those down. How many Black employees do you have? How many employees do you have the Latinx population, and so on and so forth? That doesn't take $100,000 to do. And so I just wanted to note that, and I realize that that's not your doing, Director Bonner, and that's not on you alone to change. That's part of the system. And I also want to say again, back to the commission, in terms of where our work comes in, systems change, and this type of work is hard. If it was easy, it would have happened already. That means that when we're confronted with difficult situations, we have to put that hard work in, or else it will not change. It will constantly be words. There will be data that will have to be collected in another 5 years for things that we already know about. So I want this to not be in vain. I want this to not be something that got said. I don't want this to be a report that comes back and nothing happens with it. Let's make this one of the last investments into having to find out whether or not this organization is equitable and move forward accordingly.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Griffin. Other comments or discussion? Okay. Seeing none, the recommended action is a motion to approve the contract and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents. Is there a motion?
I move that.
Motion made by Commissioner Urban. Supported by Commissioner Hess. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Thank you, Commission. This motion passes. I look forward to taking this work seriously and doing the work, as Vice Mayor Griffin said. Next on our regular agenda is item H2, City Manager Ritzma.
Consideration of a recommendation to endorse the First Amendment Assembly Subcommittee final report and direct the city manager to pursue next steps identified in the report and provide periodic updates at future city commission business meetings.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Is there a report on this item?
Yes, the Deputy City Manager, Laura Lamb, facilitated this work, and she's got a brief overview of the report and what's next.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. As you all recall, last August, you appointed Vice Mayor Griffin, Commissioner Cunningham, and Commissioner Pradel to work with the city manager to develop a definition of success to guide our response to First Amendment assemblies. And by that, we mean protests, demonstrations, rallies. The subcommittee was really intended to create a roadmap of how do we prepare for future events. And this really came in response to concerns about the city's handling of protests and marches this past summer. In addition to the three commissioners, The city manager's office staff, we had staff from Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety and the city attorney meeting over 13 times between August and December to really put together the materials that are before you this evening for consideration for endorsement. As directed, the committee did produce an initial report at the end of August. We brought back updates to you all through the city manager updates in September and November as we were continuing to work through this and produce the final report. The scope of the committee was really divided into 5 main areas. You had that first step of really defining what success looks like, the First Amendment communication strategy, looking at protocol for operations and planning, this idea of policies and training and how we can incorporate that into our work, and then the theme of accountability. In terms of the work that the subcommittee went through over the past 4 months, there are several deliverables I wanted to kind of go over with us tonight. Certainly going back to this definition of success, the group through much discussion really kind of came up with several themes of safety, community relationships, an equitable approach, and accountability to this whole process. One of the main deliverables is a communication strategy that really talks about the importance of audiences and understanding who needs to be involved at what place, at what time, what are the appropriate methods of communication, and really reinforcing throughout all of this how important communication is going to be. There also was a series of core messages produced that really try to reinforce this definition of success and then align with Imagine Kalamazoo. We really see these messages kind of helping to guide our future work, our future decisions, our future actions. Additionally, we created a web landing page, really to set the tone. We want to support people that are interested in exercising their First Amendment rights. We want to be a resource. We want to provide guidance and checklists, create opportunities for people to engage with the city as they're contemplating putting on events. So with this web landing page, this opportunity to start putting information there in one central place, hopefully for ease of use and for ease of communication. In addition to these deliverables, there really are several elements where we said we recognize there is more work that needs to be done. First and foremost, the communication strategy, we recognize everything needs to be iterative. There's a commitment that we need to test what's out there. We need to be very committed to doing debriefs, what worked, what didn't work, what do we do differently, make those adjustments, and then repeat. So we see the documents before you really living and breathing in real time and recognizing that it's going to take a lot of iteration, a lot of communication for us to get this right, and committed to doing that work. Additionally, there's a notion we know we need to have ongoing conversations. Certainly through Chief Coakley's leadership, he's made a commitment to strengthening partnerships, to having community conversations. Certainly he's been working with the team to figure out how to have conversations with community over time. We can understand the community's relationships and experiences with public safety in the city, and how do we begin to really work on these topics that keep coming up in those conversations. Lastly, we're aware there are a lot of cities in the country right now that are doing really extensive research, really extensive work at looking at what alternatives are there for use of force when you're looking at First Amendment assemblies, what de-escalation techniques might be out there. In particular, Madison, Wisconsin was brought forward as a model of a city kind of going through, customarily looking through all of these options. And we're looking to see, how do we track these cities? How do we track their research and keep bringing these conversations back around to say, what could work here? What might we try? How do we adjust our training to really sort of incorporate the best of this thinking? And lastly, I want to identify that we're awaiting the completion of the independent review by the OIR group. Certainly, we're trying to make as many people aware of the possibility, or of the opportunity, forgive me, the OIR group is having with community listening sessions. So as of right now, we've got 2 community input sessions being scheduled by the OIR group. This is an opportunity for community members to really share their experiences, their insight regarding our response to protests this last year. The first session is January 11th, second session, Monday, January 25th. Both of those are going to be at 6 p.m. They'll be virtual, available through Zoom. We've got the opportunity to stream them live with YouTube and Facebook. And certainly there's much more information available on the city's website about how people can access these listening sessions and help us spread the word to get it to as many people as possible. Overall, this was a lot of work condensed into a pretty short period of time. I certainly want to thank Vice Mayor Griffin, Commissioner Cunningham, Commissioner Pradle, members of the committee for all of the work, meeting weekly, relentlessly, getting a ton of homework, doing a lot of research and bringing back feedback the next week, ready to go again. I also really want to thank individuals that were willing to talk with us along the way. We had focus groups with event organizers. We had focus groups with individuals from the National Lawyers Guild, ACLU Lawyer Committee, and also with our local media outlets, trying to really understand that experience and how do we use that perspective and really infuse it into our processes as we try to make these better, and really offering us guidance and being patient as we try to learn alongside everybody. Certainly there's a theme here. We know there's a lot of work to be done. We recognize that I think at the very core, it's going to be about building relationships, strengthening those partnerships, and committed to keep at this and keep refining as we need to. With that, I certainly would like an opportunity to offer Vice Mayor Griffin, Commissioner Cunningham, and Pradle opportunities to offer their comments. And I'd also be happy to answer any questions that you all might have about this process.
Thank you very much, Deputy City Manager Lamb. Commissioners Pradle or Cunningham or Vice Mayor Griffin, do you want to comment at this time?
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Director Lamb. I just want to say that our City Manager Lamb, Assistant City Manager Lamb,
Deputy City Manager.
Deputy City. Thank you. I was missing all the words in there.
You can call me Laura. It's okay.
Thank you. No, I'll always give you your correct title. I just want to say to the community at large, one of the common themes that I particularly saw within this process was just a breakdown in communication continuously on multiple levels in our administration in general. And, you know, we have to take responsibility for our actions. And so that's the viewpoint that I'm taking. And, you know, I appreciate everyone who was willing to work on this project with us. Like I said, that communication piece is the component that is going to get us through a lot of the needed changes. One of the things that I specifically am pushing for, I know that we have these listening sessions, but one of the things I'm really pushing for is just a work group of citizens to really dive in and work closely with KDPS, our public safety, in determining how we want to be policed. I am a firm believer that, and I'm just going to use an extreme, if the community at large said we no longer want our officers to have guns, then, you know, I personally believe that's a decision that should be made by the chief. And if those who are serving in public safety don't want to be a part of it, then that's, you know, that's their choice. But I am a firm believer that the community, you know, has to be an integral piece of us moving forward in this process. And so a lot of our recommendations were kind of revolving around that. How do we get community involved? How do we get community engaged? And I personally would like to see a work session. And I say that because there are a lot of nuances and a lot of different little things and intricacies that have to be taken in consideration with every decision being made by our public safety. And, you know, there's a million different variety of issues that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But if we talk about this specific incidents, you know, again, we have a public safety that's been serving this community for a very long time before everybody on this call was here. And a lot of those decisions that were made within public safety were made within public safety, not with community input. And not only, you know, I say that they have heard the community on multiple occasions, but at the end of the day, if the only decisions are being made from individuals who are public safety, then I don't think that it's a fair, you're ever going to get to a place of understanding and shared responsibility. And so, once again, I encourage our public safety to, you know, stay encouraged, find ways to engage with the community and validate their voice, ensuring that they are, you know, in the forefront of everything that our public safety is doing. And once again, like I said, the communication piece is vital. And I think that's what a lot of every subject that we continuously came up with that was the continuing theme. How do we better communicate? What does that look like? Who has to be at the table? Why are they at the table? And more importantly, on our end as an administration, how do we take responsibility for our actions? How do we take responsibility for engaging and not relying on someone to come to us, but instead us going to them? So once again, I was honored to work on this project. The work is not done. We will be continuously working moving forward. And I look forward to the journey.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Other statements from members of the subcommittee, Vice Mayor Griffin or?
Yes, but I saw Commissioner, I couldn't hit the mute button, but Commissioner Praedel, if you wanted to go ahead.
Okay.
In a command, Vice Mayor. You go first.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, one, remind the community, this has been, I guess we've switched through administrations in terms of chiefs. This has been a long time coming, and it's a work in progress. I definitely want to thank Deputy City Manager Lamb for, taking this on and really, it's not easy for people to sit in spaces with people that are going to critique and, speak their truth about things. The way that you are able to handle that and move through that gracefully, really truly listening and apply that to move forward, I think that anchored this whole process. So I want to say that. And then highlighting, even though in the beginning, there were a few missteps in terms of where we were going to go with this. The direction that we are headed in, I feel like is a space of communication, a space where there will be some transparency with the community, and a place and space where we can actually move forward in a productive direction. It doesn't take away from what has happened, but hopefully this is the steps we need to move forward in a better space for our community.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Praedel.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to serve with my two colleagues as well. So thanks. I always enjoy working with both of you, and definitely want to lift up as well for Deputy City Manager Lamb. I mean, really every single segment to this, if there was any part of this process, Deputy City Manager Lamb was a part of it. And when she was listing off all those different constituent groups that were part of the conversation, I don't know if you remember this, Commissioner Cunningham, but it was one summer weekend and we said, oh yeah, we'll take on a bunch of calls and we're willing to listen and whatnot. I mean, each one of those calls was like 45 minutes, and that was, just one segment of the process, and you've been a part of every one of those part of the processes. So just really want to thank you for doing that, and just really echo as well what you said as well about how we really appreciate people coming forward and sharing their perspective. And I remember the last group that we met with of event organizers, really shared some reluctancy and just saying, if I'm going to share what's on my heart, how are you really going to put this into action? How are you going to really listen? And I appreciated people lifting that up and making that a point. Something you said, Commissioner Cunningham, early on is I remember you said you hope this is a process that when you leave as a commissioner at the end of this year, that it's something that lasts far beyond you, that it can't just be something where we keep coming back to this, and then when the people who've been champions of this go away, that it stops. And so I remember you saying that and saying that you really want to see this be a living process and a work in progress. And so, I certainly want to be committed to sticking with this, and any time that we need to revisit or revise or continue to work on it, make it better, want to be a part of that. The other thing I think is important to lift up as well is there's a KDPS policy 430, which is the First Amendment Assembly policy. And a lot of the things that we're gathering here, a lot of things that are going to come from that OIR process as well, is meant to, consider to look at that policy as well in ways that can be adapted or changed as well. And so I think that's an important part as well to this process. But I think that about covers it. And I, again, really appreciate everybody who's been a part of the process and sticking with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Praedel. Are there any questions for staff or members of the subcommittee from commissioners that did not participate as part of the work group? Commissioner Hess.
Either Laura or someone or Chief Coakley, how often can we expect updates? This had periodic updates in city commission meetings, but how often can we really expect updates to happen from this group and moving forward?
I can certainly start with that, and I'd love for others to chime in. As we identified a couple of key next steps, I see there being milestones. Certainly, first and foremost or most prominent is this independent review. As Commissioner Pradel mentioned, there is some policy work that is mid-work because we know that there's going to be great insight that's going to come out of the review. And so I see it, one, there's going to be obviously updates of how the review is coming. When we get to the completion of the review and we're looking at the report, there's absolutely going to be a need to come back to say, based on lessons learned here, here's how we're going to make tweaks to policy 430, how we're going to make tweaks to the communication strategy. So I see certainly anytime we have something shift, we can have it as part of city manager updates. But as we hit milestones where we've had a listening session and we're coming back to say what we've learned from it, or we've made some updates to the communication strategy, I think the idea is as we have relevant information to bring it forward. Part of this idea of the commitment we made to listen is to show meaningful action. And so as we're able to demonstrate that we've heard, we've listened, we've responded, as many times as we can bring that up to demonstrate movement, I'd like that to be the case. So without sidestepping your conversation, sidestepping your question entirely, I think it's as we hit key milestones or any shifts that demonstrate we're making progress, we'd love to work it in as an update.
Thank you.
Just want to give a chance, Commissioner Pradel, for anyone else who did not participate in the work group. Okay, I don't see any questions. Go ahead, Commissioner Pradel.
Commissioner Hess, this just made me think of something as well about this like work in progress. And I forgot to mention this as well, but one thing that was really neat to see as kind of a test of this was the election. And I thought one of the best instances of citywide communication this year was surrounding the election. And, you know, just being proactive, showing people that we're being thoughtful about how to protect people at the polls, how to make sure that people understand that if something does occur after the election where there's unrest, that we're ready and being thoughtful about how we're going to address it. And so, you know, one of the things that we did as a committee is we kind of had to pivot, you know, the 3 weeks before we got to the election and really start thinking about that as an issue and see how would, based on all these things that we're talking about, how are we going to address if something does happen related to the election? And luckily nothing did, but it was neat to see how all that good, strong communication happened, how the press conference happened proactively, how there was communication between the city manager's office with the clerk's office and whatnot to make sure they're talking with, I mean, meetings happening with the clerk and public safety. I mean, how often does that happen? So, you know, just seeing how the communication was really ramped up with, surrounding the election. And I think as we continue to have opportunities like that, we have a real opportunity to kind of test our muscle and try out and see how well we communicate.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Any other questions at this point? All right. I just want to say that I do want to recognize Deputy City Manager Lamb for doing the staff work on this, among others, but also particularly Vice Mayor Griffin, Commissioners Cunningham and Pradel, who in essence volunteered for this focused task force work. And this kind of work is not a task that goes on for a smaller group in perpetuity. The idea was that we would have a product and make some recommendations. And even though the work continues, it doesn't mean that the task force itself is continually responsible for this. This is in essence handed back to the commission, which is why we have an opportunity to act on it. So at this point, recommended action is a motion to endorse the report and direct the city manager to pursue next steps and provide periodic updates. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham. Is there a second?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Pradel. Is there any further discussion? Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
okay, sorry, Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The motion passes. Now we're down to reports and legislation. City Manager Ritzma, do you have a report?
Not this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Attorney Robinson, do you have a report this evening?
No, Your Honor.
Clerk Borling, do you have a report?
No, sir.
Thank you so much. Next is the opportunity for commissioner comments. Commissioner Urban, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I want to take this opportunity to make a clarification about the percentage of the city budget that is KDPS expenditures. It was reported that it was close to 50% of the budget, and then later it was corrected by the city mayor as being 15% of the budget. Well, both those numbers are correct, but you have to ask which budget we're talking about. The statement that KDPS's expenditures comprise nearly 50% of the city's budget, that is the general fund budget. That is the money that is raised from taxes and from state funding, revenue sharing, and fees and permits. The total budget, of which KDPS is only 15% of the total expenditures, that includes the enterprise funds, wastewater and the water systems. Well, those are huge, and they generate their own revenue. So both numbers are correct, but you have to say what budget we're talking about when we use these percentages. And I think whenever we engage in public dialogue with people, we need to be as precise as we can possibly be so that we don't add to confusion. That was a terrible example of how easily it can be done. I hope that we can do better in the future about tossing around numbers and percentages, and take the time to put them in context and to do the explaining that needs to go on. Even though you may think you understand, the general public is just beginning to grasp how complicated and complex city affairs can be. And if we want to have their trust, we're going to have to earn it by being precise and being concise. So that's my little lesson for today. That's all.
Thank you for your clarification, Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Cunningham.
Just want to start off by saying Happy New Year to all my colleagues, to the city administration, to the city at whole. 2020 was a very rough year, and hopefully 2021 we can create more positives. This is an election year, so it's very important that Kalamazoo citizens get engaged. This is a good meeting to be a part of, especially in the beginning of the year, because we deal with our budget. And so individuals will be looking to obtain these seats. These actual actions that we are taking this weekend and in our next meeting are cornerstone to this role. So I want to encourage community members to get engaged. They call it off-year elections. I think I received an email saying they're no longer calling anything off-year election. Every year is an important election. So I just want to encourage everyone for this year. I also want to give a shout out to my cousin Kendrick Taylor. He is celebrating a birthday today, getting older. I know I'll be 21 this year, but he's a little older than that. So I just wanted to send out some love to everybody, and hopefully we have a good year.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Knott.
No further comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Commissioner Pradle.
First of all, Happy New Year to everyone. I noticed, I recognized a number of people who left comments tonight, and I'll try to reach out to those individuals as well and try to address some of their questions as well, but I have no further comments tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Praedel. Commissioner Hess?
Just a few things. Also, gratitude to everyone who called and expressed interest in the city's budget and budgetary process. And I'd like to give a shout out to Deb Droppers and those who tried to create a festive New Year Eve downtown. And I did go downtown and enjoyed the atmosphere, the lights, the people, and the festivities in this time of a pandemic. It's been really difficult, like my colleagues have mentioned, this year in 2020 to really maintain normalcy and civility. But I would encourage just gratitude to everyone and for maintaining the process. Also, I want to begin this year with the resolve for myself and for others to know that we're in this together. I will continue to talk about community, that it really literally means to have charge of together, that we have charge of this whole thing together, the budget, the well-being, and the health and safety of all people in our community. And I take that very seriously. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes, I want to thank those who called in to lift their comments up on all the various topics that we had. Looking forward to a year of change, systems change, continued growth. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Griffin. So I have a little longer comments tonight, just being the first meeting of 2021. And so I've written some things down. So mid-afternoon on New Year's Day, I heard multiple sirens, which is not necessarily an unusual thing for me from where I live. But when you hear more than one or two, you wait for that fire truck siren next, wondering what it is that's going on. Well, I didn't hear the fire truck sound. And as it turned out, a 21-year-old young man died from a gunshot wound in an apartment complex on Alamo Avenue. I want to express my sincere condolences to the young man's family and to those who did the shooting. This is not an act you will ever forget. I used to work for an ambulance service as an emergency medical technician in Tennessee, and I performed CPR on people who did not survive. Some I knew it was too late, but it was our job to try. These events are a profound reminder to me that we do have good, caring, hardworking public safety officers who are trained to be first responders. And I am sure one of our officers or more were attempting life-saving measures on this young man. Multiple times in 2020, public safety officers have been the last to touch or attempt to assist young people who have passed. I particularly remember one body camera video where a young female officer is holding the head of a person who is shot and lying on the ground. And she is saying something like, "Hang in there, honey," to him. Didn't much sound like public safety talk. These are not situations that are forgotten at the end of a shift. Things like this stick with you. We all bear the scars, but first responders carry a special burden. I pray for them as well. This is not what we want 2021 to be. Next, I'd like to turn everyone's attention to the Kalamazoo Foundation for Excellence annual report. Hold it up here. I hope people have seen this. This was mailed to all city residents. And on the back cover, if you don't open it, but please do, you'll see a very nice picture of Dr. Angela Graham Williams and a quote from her on the back cover. She says, "We have come through such a tumultuous year with protests and COVID and losing loved ones, businesses struggling. 2020 has been difficult personally, professionally, emotionally. Through it all, the Foundation for Excellence has provided help and hope. We'd like to remind our community that none of us is in this alone, and as residents, we have each other's backs." This report contains page after page of good city work in the areas of COVID disaster relief, business support, Kalamazoo Public Schools learning hubs, affordable housing work, and youth programs, all directly related to creating a sense of hope and support and opportunity. The best long-term antidotes to senseless gun violence and despair. Lastly, here we go into 2022, and it is not going to start a lot differently from how 2020 ended. But we approach every new year with hope and a continued commitment to make Kalamazoo be a better place for all who live here. We're going to have some tough days here right out of the gate, but I will suggest how we're going to approach these challenges together. One, by remaining grounded, not emotionally following every internet story or reinforcing dire predictions. We will keep our feet firmly on the ground here in Kalamazoo. Two, by being resolute. We have goals, we have heart, we have plans, and our intentions are grounded in our principles. We will be resolute in our commitment to the tasks ahead. And number three, by focusing on together. Although it seems the world wants us to see one another as enemies and mistrust each other's every action, we commit to assuming that we share more than we do not. And we will focus on those values that align us and make us feel good about being human together. Please keep your hearts open, Kalamazoo. I love you, Kalamazoo. We are adjourned.